Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. It is exactly 9:22. We're into the second hour of News and Views right here on Salam Media. And the next interview is also supposed to be a three-way interview with Rashaad Carlsen and Irfaan Mangera. And this is really about the political party called Rise Mzansi. And I think if I am correct, I think Rashaad Carlsen is in the Western Cape. We're hoping for him to reconnect. And I see Irfaan Mangera is nodding his head in the affirmative. So I am right on that one. Let's start with you, Irfaan. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the program and congratulations on the National Leadership Collective, that the title you hold, obviously, with Rise Mzansi. Welcome to the show.
Walaikum salam, shukran, and it has been an incredible journey. The title is there, but it's been hard work to get. In fact, this weekend that's passed was 1 year anniversary since we launched, and I
Wow.
was part of those founding members of Rise Mzansi. So it's been a huge honor to lead and build the organization.
Okay, I understand that Rashaad is going to be joining us via telephone. We will talk with him in a minute, inshallah. So let's stick with you for a while, Irfaan. You're saying that it's been a year since you started, you've joined Rise Mzansi. I've only just recently heard about you guys, well, when I say recently, over the past few months, through a mutual friend who speaks very highly of you as a person and seems to have a lot of hope for Rise Mzansi. When we look at the smaller parties, I think one of the issues that pops into your mind, and all of our minds, of course, is, and the big question should be, who is funding the parties? But before you respond to that, why did you, Irfaan Mangera, decide to join politics? And how do you believe you and your party can make a difference?
In fact, both of those questions are connected for me because for at least 15 years of my work in civil society, organizing, doing charity work, doing support work in sports, arts, education, etc., we kept finding that we engaged leaders in the political space who just don't have the political will anymore to do the right thing in the interest of the people. A lot of that people that we encounter are always self-interested, and so the ticking point for me was the last 2 years at the Kathrara Foundation, where I had organized and put together the National Youth Coalition of 150 plus youth organizations across the country. And on both occasions, when we engaged and tried to engage the presidency and the departments responsible for youth issues, we'd not get a response. Until today, we haven't received info and responses from our petition years back. And that was a constant feeling for me because there's no shortage of person in this country who doesn't understand the issues that are being faced. Every single one of us live through the decaying nature of our systems in our country. But we've not seen a leadership that unifies towards a common objective of shaping a new South Africa that is free for all. And so me coming and joining the team at Rise and being part of that leadership to develop this was recognizing that we need a new political vehicle to reshape how South African politics looks and works. Because if we want this democracy to work, then we need a leadership to be for, by, and with the people in the constant flow. It can't only be during electoral cycles that we see leaders listen and engage and deliver services. It has to be a constant form of participatory democracy. And that really is the core of what was the rise of Rise Mzansi. It was a call to action, and the name itself speaks because we took long hours trying to see what could unify us and get the ordinary citizen feeling like they have a stake in this country and they need to be the ones who lead it. And so Rise Mzansi, therefore, is that movement, and that we are hoping can continue the test of time to serve in the best interest of the people.
Inshallah. I'll come back to you in a minute or two. Let's join Rashaad Carlsen. Salaam alaikum to you. You're joining us via telephone, and you're going to talk about your disillusionment with the political apathy in the country, political leaders who seem to be in it for what's in it for them. And you're hoping Rise
Yeah.
Mzansi is going to add a fresh, clean, and a committed approach to politics and to, I should imagine, our youth as well. Welcome, and let's talk about your passion for Rise Mzansi.
Shukran for having me. I'm on the line from Cape Town. Now, I've been involved in politics for more than 30 years, but I've never, ever in my life had a desire, need, or want to become a politician. Because I always believe more competent and better people who can do what needs to be done. However, after 30 years of non-delivery, Kabbalism, nepotism, Zionism, corruption, you name it, at some point you say, what are we doing? Every 5 years we vote for the same people and we get the same results. It's time normal, ordinary citizens like myself and the people in Rise Mzansi, who are not politicians per se, they're ordinary people, civil society. We're saying, you know what, 30 years of non-delivery. It's time people who want to make a change start making that change. That is what drew me to Rise Mzansi, and that is what's going to make a difference to South Africa. That people who actually want to make a difference, not in it for their pockets, not in it for the fame and the glory and the status, but people who want to make a difference. And I have no ambition, none whatsoever, to be a career politician. For some reason, politicians think politics is a career. I'm sorry, but if you use the analogy of a computer, garbage in, garbage out. If you want a different outcome, you change the input. That is what works for me in Rise Mzansi. That we're putting a different input in. People who have passion for delivery, passion for the people of South Africa, passion for South Africa. And it's not for Irfaan or myself or for people of our age. It's for our children, and their grandchildren. Because I promise you as I'm talking to you, if we leave the status quo, we are going to look at Zimbabwe and Zimbabwe is going to look good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Irfaan, let me come back to you. And I don't think you answered the question regarding funding. I think there were questions around possible funding by Zionist entities. How do you respond to that?
So I was waiting for the actual question because you said you'd like to start.
Okay.
We have declared our funding as per the legislation. We got a lot of response because our donors, by and large, are those who donate under the 100,000 mark. So professionals who believe that this country is worth saving and they donate 50,000, 90,000, etc. But those, we also appeal to high net worth individuals to also donate. And one such individual is Rebecca Oppenheimer. She is the grandchild of the Oppenheimer family, but we have received a significant donation from her. And there's a few in-kind donations as well that's over the 100,000 mark. By and large, Rise Mzansi is funded by ordinary citizens, myself included, or the leadership who contribute daily. And I can give you a picture of this. Just yesterday, I had 6 different events, all of that self-funded, and whether it was the petrol traveling, etc. Now, there is concerns, and I think naturally because people have been so disappointed and distrustful of politicians, that is something that has emerged. And I think prior to October 7th, that is something that also has become part of the conversation. We have also rejected money from some donors because their donors did not align to our vision, our values, and the policy that we speak about on multiple fronts. Some of those demands, in fact, from donors were that they remove certain individuals from the party because they don't represent who they want. And so for us, we're very clear. We take decisions on principle and we take decisions on our values. If people don't align with that, we are happy to turn it away, even though that helps us as a small party grow because we are outnumbered and out funded by the big established parties. And so for us, we're quite clear. We won't just make decisions for convenience of, yes, I can get an extra 50 million rand here so that I can actually contest. That's not how we work. We work on principle and we work on values. And if people align with those, that's how they contribute. And we welcome more donations because I think for too long, and part of what Rashaad is speaking about is that the apathy and the disillusionment often comes that the ordinary citizen feel like they don't have a stake. And I've been doing my own donation drives to try to get Rise Mzansi 100 rands, 200 rands, because that helps us build a movement that can significantly contest and create enough opposition to these established parties who think that they are divine, they're there to lead by divine right instead of the democratic voice of the people being heard. So I hope that answers your question sufficiently. You're more than welcome to also, if and your listeners can check on our website. We have published our donor list, and we'll continue to do so in the interest of transparency as well.
Okay, going forward then, post elections, if you don't get the numbers you were hoping to get, I hope and pray you do, because you sound like you really and truly have got your heart and soul in this party, and you want to do right by the people of South Africa. Inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, enable that to happen for you and for Rise Mzansi. But should you not get the numbers, and everyone's talking coalitions, if you do decide to go that route to still remain relevant and alive and serve the people, whom would you go to bed with?
So there's three things I'd like to mention. Number one is South Africa is in the coalition question is not it's eventually going to come. It is here and it's going to be here for the next few cycles. And so
right.
It's happening already. And what we need to then do as a citizenry, as a people, not just parties, as a people, we need to decide how do we want these coalitions to work in the best interest of the people. And so we then set out and we rejected, for example, joining the multi-party charter or / moonshot pact from the beginning, because we could already see through the fact that this wasn't just an anti-ANC coalition. We all know that the ANC is deeply flawed. They're not serving in the interests. And so just on the basis of that is not enough. What offer do you give South Africans of a new vision, and what offer do you bring that's going to inspire people towards something different? So the multi-party charter really is flawed because it was organized around getting the ANC out rather than saying we can do something better. We also believe that two things need to happen for coalitions to work, and that is your values and your common program. There's models of coalitions around the world that work, and that's a result of mature politicians, people and leaders who have the capability to fight an election. And by fight, I mean go out and win support, but do so obviously with ethics and so on. But when you come to the table after, if you only got 30%, or if you only got 20% or 50%, you have no right to be dictating as this big man what is it in the best interest. You need to come to the table and say, my 5 core issues as a party, the mandate from the people who supported me are housing, electricity, water, etc. And the other parties do the same. And once this is on the table, you're able to then design and say, okay, for this 5 years in our administration, we're willing to work together in order to achieve these 5 things. Now, you can't do that on the basis of just wanting to get someone out, because that's why you're seeing the failure of the multi-party charter. So it's a common principled view. It's a view around common values. There are parties who we won't coalesce with because they're vehemently against the constitutional rights that have been provisioned for people. An example of this, you have somebody who's a rabid racist running a party that you are now meant to work with and try to figure things out. That's never going to work because they have deeply opposing views. And for us to build a mature politics that serves the interests of the people, we have to put principle first. What currently is happening in Johannesburg is an example of how parties, particularly small parties, Al Jamaa, IEC, there's a few AIC and a few others who have gone in with the idea of position. Which part of the pie can I eat? Instead of saying, how do we commonly build a 5-year term that can deliver on the best interests of the residents of Johannesburg? And so that's a different conversation that will happen. And for us, we're saying we are willing to work in coalitions, and we're also willing not to work. If we can't find that alignment on program and on values, we're also willing to work in council and in legislature and parliament to hold accountable the executive, because that's equally, in fact, the most important thing when you actually can hold accountable and make sure parliament works in that regard. So that is the nature of how we view coalitions. We are willing to do so, but we're also not willing to do so that affects, by and large, the public. We need to make sure that all coalition agreements are also transparent and publicly aware, so that the populace can see when you went to go and coalesce with a party, what was the agreement, and how are they holding us accountable towards that agreement. We don't know the nature of the municipalities, who signed what and what was that for. And that's because primarily the focus has been on convenience of which position you get, rather than how do we coalesce on a program of action to deliver the best service for people.
Sounds most honorable indeed. We're going to be watching you and your party very, very closely. Let's cross over to Rashaad Carlsen now. And the big question, Rashaad, we do know that there's, regarding youth votes, there seems to be this apathy amongst our youth. And it's not only in South Africa, it seems to be the trend all around the world. That youth, they've got the strongest voices. They can go out in their droves regarding civil society issues. And yet, when it comes to election time, we just don't seem to have them committed enough to cast their votes. And it's really, really important that we garner that vote. Different political parties need to do everything they can to get the youth vote, because it's about their futures. Why is it that we have this apathy, and what is Rise Mzansi doing about capturing that vote? Rashaad?
Shukran for that question. If I can just extend to what Irfaan was talking about the Zionist funding. One of the things I've been very clear about, and Zionist funding, it's amazing who the people are who are pointing fingers. It's the very Zionists like the DA who are doing that. And let's talk about Rebecca Oppenheimer. Rebecca Oppenheimer made it very clear. I'm not my father and I'm not my grandfather. We've benefited enormously from this country's wealth before 1994. It's high time we start fixing it. So when you want to talk about Zionist funding, if my father was born Christian and I became Muslim, does that still make me Christian? That's the question we as Muslims should be asking. Now, getting on to the youth. Since I've joined Rise Mzansi, which was about September last year, I've encountered hundreds of youth who have no desire to vote. Why? Complete apathy for the election process, for politicians, for what's happening in our country. And since joining Rise Mzansi, I've been a strong proponent of getting the youth to register to vote. To date, I've had several dozen youth registering to vote and talking to their friends to vote. Why? Because it's the first time they have an iota of a chance of getting something done. But through all of this, there's a lot of work going into the youth. Now, we're not going to fix it now before the 29th of May election. We still have a lot of work ahead of us. And like the National Leadership Collective said, when on the 1st of June, you start working in the provincial and national legislature, it's not a holiday. You're on 8 days a week, 24 hours a day. There's no holidays. That's when the real work starts, which is something which politicians today, currently, don't seem to realize. You're a servant of the people. And if the youth have apathy towards voting, it's our responsibility to make sure we include them. So by the next local government election or the next national provincial election, the turnout of youth is off the chart. Then there's another thing we're forgetting. The deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf, blind, and disabled are the most marginalized in our country. The interesting part is the deaf and hard of hearing had a representative in national government since 1994. I've met with the deaf and hard of hearing community over the last few weeks, and they have gotten nothing in return. My best friend, I encouraged him to leave South Africa to go live in Australia and get married there. Why? Because benefits for the deaf were much better. He wants to come back. My mandate is the deaf, hard of hearing, and the disabled. That's what my mandate is in Rise Mzansi. I want to see the deaf community not being sidelined, not being partially integrated, fully integrated. We live in a technologically advanced society. Why is it that we need an interpreter every time? Why is there not an app which interprets sign language and takes sign language and interprets it into or transfers it into audible language? Why can't we have a deaf or hard of hearing or disabled secretary? Why is that the case? because we're perpetuating what has always been. We need to change that. We need to change it drastically. And Rise Mzansi is that start to change that.
Okay. All right, guys, that's all we have time for. Thank you indeed for your insights. A lovely discussion, I might add. Rise Mzansi's candidate who wants to see change and delivery after 30 years of non-delivery. And that, of course, is you, Rashaad Carlsen, in the Western Cape. And Irfaan Mangera, Rise Mzansi National Leadership Collective. We're going to be watching you and your party very, very closely. We're expecting wonderful things coming from your party, inshallah. Thank you indeed for your time, and go well. I love you with you both. And the rest of your party, of course. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair. Remember us in your du'as, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Inshallah. And of course, that brings us up to 9:43. We are running behind time, but of course, very important discussions that we've been having all morning. Standing by to talk with us now, I understand, is Dr. Ahmed Haroon Jazbai. He is the executive member at Media Review Network. And we'll wrap up by talking with Adele Kirsten from Gun Free South Africa.